Hello, I am Ed Raby. I am the host of Simple Life Philosophy. This is the channel that seeks to find a philosophy of living life that is simple both in its ability to be understood and also in its ability to be executed. Our desire here is to focus on a more simple and more profitable life, a more focused life. And to do that, we engage in a lot of different philosophical systems, most notably Stoicism, minimalism, essentialism, and something I want to talk about today, the idea of pursuing virtue. Now, in past videos, I've talked about how the Stoics, for instance, focused on pursuing virtue for virtue's sake, because it is one of the major goals of life. It's what, in many ways, differentiates us from other animals, is that we're looking for a virtuous path. We're looking for something that we don't sacrifice, and that is our virtues. We do not sacrifice our integrity. Now, in my particular case, I actually adopted in my life the 9 noble virtues, often accompanied with asa through, but also I have seen the 9 noble virtues in several different places. I remember when I had my other channel, I had a poster that had the 9 noble virtues, and there was a Masonic symbol on it. So there was definitely some correlations there between the Masons and the 9 noble virtues, and several other organizations I have seen them on. But almost anybody can adopt the 9 noble virtues. And there's some correlations actually. As I've begun to study Stoicism here, I've noticed that there's actually a few similar ones. Courage, I think, is in there. And then I noticed that Stoicism will talk about justice, but justice for me always was several of the virtues, the 9 noble virtues, kind of coalescing into one virtue expressed as justice. Okay, justice being, trying our interaction with other people, acting in a just manner, focusing on people, our behavior towards others. And in the 9 noble virtues, that can be hospitality, where you're basically, you're taking care of people and being hospitable towards people, leaving your home open for the stranger on occasion. I know that's, in our modern world, that's anathema. How dare you bring a stranger in your home? But back in the day, hospitality was kind of an essential, because people would travel and, there wasn't, a Super 8 at every corner, or some sort of hotel or motel, and so people often did take people into their home. Behaving honorably towards each other. There's a lot of different ways that the 9 noble virtues express themselves in justice. Fidelity, being loyal, upholding the truth, and so what a lot of argument takes place with the 9 noble virtues, and say, if I were to sit down with a Stoic that just practices the 4 virtues of Stoicism, what the argument would be is, well, my virtues are just more different flavors of expression of those 4 virtues, or whatever. I don't think an argument is necessary here when we talk about virtues, because a virtue by definition is something that is good. Okay, it isn't a virtue unless it's good. Okay, and that's why discussing human virtues, I think, becomes a real bridge with a lot of philosophical systems, because you can talk virtue with just about anybody, whether they're religious or not, whether they're deep into philosophy or not, or whatever. You can always talk about what it means to be courageous, or what it means to follow after the truth, what it means to pursue justice. For me, I think the 9 noble virtues came about more as a way of just expressing, finding a way to have a set of things that I was pursuing. I didn't want something as small. I think that my problem with the Stoic list of virtues is it's really short. And I get that that's it's like, well, isn't that a minimalist concept to kind of get that down to the basics? I think so, except I think there's more to discuss when you have more virtues to discuss. And we can sit there and we could debate semantics all the time, but I think the main goal for me at the time, and this is before Stoicism is a very recent thing for me, essentialism as well, minimalism has probably been around the longest in my philosophical framework. The thing that's second, though, is, and still recent, is the Nine Noble Virtues. Because right after I deconverted from Christianity and became an atheist, I said I still need a code. A lot of people ask me, because I wear a lot of necklaces like this. I wear this a Volknut. It's associated with Odin and death, and in this particular case, the Volknut is surrounded by the Viking runes. And people ask me, why do I have these symbols, and why do I follow the Nine Noble Virtues? And I think it's because it allows me to have a bridge discussion. And this particular symbol reminds me constantly of what I'm pursuing, that I'm pursuing virtue, that there's one Volknut. There are 3 triangles. So there are 9 sides of that triangle, so the 9 noble virtues. And back in the day, I used to talk about the 3 higher virtues, which were justice, wisdom, and love. And I feel that love is a virtue. And love can express itself in multiple terms. I was just reading the book, How to Be a Stoic, and he talks about how the Greeks had various different flavors of love, but they were all ultimately expressions of that same, what I would consider a virtue, love. So when I talk about the 9 noble virtues, for me, it became a focal point of how to focus the character of my life. And this is where, and then the 9 noble virtues is kind of bridged into Stoicism, because Stoicism begins to talk about wisdom, it talks about justice, it talks about, in particular, that one of the main tenets, as I talked about in another video, is virtue, is the thing. You never sacrifice your virtues for any reason, okay? That it's the one thing that truly and genuinely makes you a good human being, is that virtue is what you're pursuing. Now, for me, I resonated with this when I read this from the Stoics, because I'd already come to this conclusion from following the 9 noble virtues, that virtue in and of itself is enough, and it is something that we can pursue and go after and kind of embrace. And so for me, to meditate on what it meant to be courageous every 9 days or so, because I remember when I first started following the 9 noble virtues, I would meditate on what it means to be courageous. And the next day I'd talk about, what does it mean to be disciplined? How do you discipline your life? What is fidelity? What is honor? I mean, honor, you could spend days thinking about honor and trying to figure out what honor is. And honor, along with all the other virtues, is just one of those things that it kept me moving towards something, and it led to a discovery. Number one, the main discovery of all of this is that virtue can be pursued, and you don't need a religion to do it. If you want to have one, I suppose, if that's your framework, but you don't need religion or a God looking over your shoulder or any of that stuff to live virtuously. You can discuss virtue with anybody. I can sit there and talk, and it's a bridge thing. And it doesn't matter, because as one human being to another, I can sit down and bridge the gap between you and me simply by a discussion of virtue and how we can be a better, more virtuous people. And so the 9 noble virtues have been around in my life for quite some time now. I've been out of the Christian faith, trying to think here, since 2015, 14, somewhere in there is when I realized that, pretty much my religion was bunk. And then about 2018 is when I left the pulpit, and I had already been an atheist for a couple of years by that time, still preaching. Now, it's an interesting story. Go to my other channel, The Rabid Atheist, and you'll hear multiple videos about my deconversion story. But getting past all that, once I got past that, okay, what do I live for now? And I realized that virtue is something that every religious system, every philosophical system seems to take, either borrow, steal, or create, or whatever. I think in religious cases, it's basically they just rip it off from the society. And we come up with virtues as human beings because it allows us to pursue what's best about being human. And that's kind of, those are the things that resonate with me. And also, the Nine Noble Virtues has been a real bridge to certain philosophical ideas. For instance, there's a lot of wisdom in some of the Viking wisdom that I discovered at that time, and there's still a lot of that flows through my thinking. Somebody asked me what my focus is most of the time. Well, I try to focus on what is important and what is the best course of action, whatever that course of action may be. And so I focus more on myself. It makes me different that as long as I am living virtuously and following the Nine Noble Virtues, I think I find myself in a better position to be helpful for others, but I also, I think, grow a little bit more. And I think that's the real key for me. Well, I want to thank you for stopping by and sticking around for me pontificating a little bit on the Nine Noble Virtues and kind of why they're part of my philosophy. Probably over the next, who knows how long, I'll take one of those virtues from time to time and talk about it, break it down. It'll be fun to maybe focus on some of those virtues and have a discussion about what does it mean to be courageous, and what does it mean to pursue the truth, and what does it mean to show hospitality. These are all things that I think can be a great focal point in finding a simple philosophy of life, which is following after virtue, living according to our nature and moving forward with our lives. I think that's the biggest thing, focusing and moving forward. Well, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate every single one of you. Make sure you like the video if you like it, dislike it if you don't. Talk about various virtue systems that you may have followed or discovered in the comments. I'm always looking for great discussions on different virtues and why people pursue them. Subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it's released. And once again, thank you for stopping by. This has been Simple Life Philosophy, and I'm your host, Ed Raby, and I'll see you next time.